आप 30-year-old हो, अगर आप 50 साल के टाइम पे चाहते हो कि इंश्योरेंस कंपनी क्लेम पे करे, तो उनको ये सारे स्टेप्स लेने पड़ेंगे.
The charge that they put on a bill for a health insurance,
right,
versus if you don't have an health insurance, is always difference.
Correct.
So, for example, if you say you have a Mediclaim or a health insurance, sorry, Mediclaim is such a normal word. Yes. The charge is 10,000. If you say I don't have one, then the charge is 7,000.
Correct.
Why? What is this? And I'm sure the insurance companies are aware of this, and why it is not being checked at the ground level. And
correct. So India, mein, first of all, hospitals do not have any pricing regulation.
Correct.
Right?
That's a big problem. Yeah.
Right. So hospitals can basically charge depending upon their own systems. Right. Smaller hospitals do what you said. Right. Very small hospitals, nursing homes, they will define everything based on whether you are taking insurance or not. What larger hospitals do is very different. What larger hospitals do is that they do over treatment, right? जैसे मैं example देता हूँ, मेरे father का खुद का case हुआ है, where my father had a major stomach related issue, right? And he was in hospital for a good time. आप admit हुए क्या hospital में? तो वो अगर नहीं हुए तो आपका golden question to ask before you ask any insurance company which does not have enough healthy people will not be able to pay for sick. हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस है, लॉटरी नहीं है भाई, गवर्नमेंट की कोई स्कीम नहीं है जहाँ पे कहीं से ऊपर से पैसे गिर रहे हैं. यू फॉल सिक अब्रॉड एंड यू नीड ट्रीटमेंट अब्रॉड व्हाइल यू हैव बीन ट्रैवलिंग देयर फॉर अ लेजर ट्रिप और अ बिजनेस ट्रिप. In that case, obviously, this health insurance does not cover it.
So, hi guys, welcome back to one more episode of trying to decode insurance. In the last 2 episodes, what we did is we looked at the umbrella view or the overall view of what insurance is. But in this episode, what we are trying to do is get into details insurance wise. So for example, we are talking today about health insurance, and here is Mahavir once again with us. So Mahavir, आज हम जानने वाले हैं what is health insurance, what is it all about, that you know people have lot of conversations, but in the end people don't know what it is about.
Correct. So the biggest funny thing about health insurance is that the name health insurance in itself is a misnomer, right? हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस का मतलब अगर किसी को ऐसे ही रैंडमली सपोज आज पहली बार कोई हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस के बारे में पढ़ रहा है, इफ ही इज रीडिंग अबाउट हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस, उसको लगेगा हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस मीनिंग एवरीथिंग रिलेटेड टू हेल्थ केयर इज कवर्ड अंडर हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस, राइट? बट इट्स नॉट लाइक दैट. इट बेसिकली हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस इज कॉन्सेप्चुअलाइज्ड एज अ प्रोडक्ट विच कवर्स हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन रिस्क्स.
It covers hospitalization. It should cover everything, right? That's
exactly. Why. Yeah. So the thing is that see, the name has been given as such in a way that people are attracted to the product. So when it started around 20 years earlier, the health insurance जब पहली बार आया था, it was not called health insurance actually. It was called Mediclaim. Right? You would have heard the name Mediclaim.
Mediclaim कराया कि नहीं?
हाँ, Mediclaim कराया. अभी भी लोग बोलते हैं. So it's a Mediclaim was basically medical का claim, right? So that was the name. So the government insurance companies basically called it Mediclaim, right? And then when private insurers started coming in, they started calling it more holistic and calling it health insurance. But nothing changed largely in the product. It was still covering hospitalization costs, right? So what is health insurance? Health insurance is a policy that basically covers you for all kinds of hospitalization expenses, including hospitalization treatment expenses which could occur before and after the hospitalization. So I'll give you an example. Okay, let's say someone suddenly has a headache, right? And he goes to a doctor, and the doctor basically says that okay, now you need to get some tests done, you need to take some medicines, right? All that will happen. Then the doctor basically sees all the reports and says you need to go to a headache specialist, right? Then the person goes to the headache specialist. Then after the headache specialist sees stuff, he feels that okay, this thing specifically requires a hospitalization. Then the person is admitted in the hospital, and then the entire admission happens. Probably let's say if a surgery happens, all that happens. Uske baad when he is discharged, right? Then after discharge, the doctor will basically give a discharge summary report which will say कि ये medicines आपको लेनी है. किसी ने भी अगर hospitalization देखी है तो you would have seen this. These are the medicines you need to take. These are the follow-up checks you need to do. These are the stuff you need to do. Then those also are expenses, right? Meaning because you will go to a doctor again. Correct. एक follow-up check के लिए एक medical checkup फिर होगा. Probably that brain जो भी दुख रहा था, that again will have to be checked whether everything is okay or not. So all these expenses, right? Right from the first doctor that you went to till the last doctor you went to get that hospitalization treatment का holistic treatment, that is covered under health insurance, right? Okay. But generally if मुझे खांसी सर्दी हो गया, right, and I am just basically going to a doctor and getting some medicines, let's say he prescribes me an antibiotic, he prescribes me 2-3 medicines, one test, and I get okay in that, I'm not hospitalized, it's not linked to any
Okay.
hospitalization, then that expense is not covered under health insurance. So health insurance is core coverage on hospitalization expenses, and hence it also covers pre and post hospitalization ka kharcha. That
So
way.
for example, if somebody gets not dengue, but
Right.
is very close to getting a dengue,
Correct.
but is not hospitalized,
Yes.
and the doctor has said no, you stay at home and take rest for 6 days,
Correct.
and it should be done.
Correct.
That won't be covered.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
What?
not.
But he
Yes.
went to the doctor and the
Correct.
doctor said, so that won't be covered.
Yeah, that won't be covered. See, I'll tell you what is the main logic behind insurance, right? Insurance is there to cover you for large expenses, which can basically dent your financial life, right?
Okay.
तो ये जो छोटे खर्चे होते हैं, जो आपके सर्दी खांसी के खर्चे हैं, या you're getting treated at home, these are not those big that it's going to shake up your finances, right? Insurance basically is a product which always will be profitable and viable for the customer and for the insurance company when the frequency is low and the severity is high. कि मतलब बहुत बड़ा इम्पैक्ट है, बट फ्रीक्वेंसी बहुत कम है, तो ही वो इंश्योरेंस कंपनी उसको कवर कर पाएगा. इमेजिन एन इंश्योरेंस कंपनी हैविंग टू गिव अ कवर अबाउट सर्दी खांसी. Like right now we are sitting in Bombay, everybody, if you go by metro, everybody is coughing.
हमारे चलते ही रहता है.
Exactly, everybody is coughing. Like you just go to a metro and just sit and just watch. Everybody, almost like 70-80% people are either coughing or sneezing, right? So वो cover करने की viability insurance के पास नहीं है. What insurance can cover is large expenses which will impact your finances, which are not that frequent, but which are required for you, and an insurance company also can viably cover it, right?
So then I wanted to ask one more thing,
Sure.
because this happened to me, that there's something called as OPD.
Right.
Now some insurance covers that,
Correct.
some doesn't cover that.
Correct.
First of all, what is this OPD?
हाँ, तो OPD is basically a term which hospitals use, और वो धीरे धीरे अभी हम भी यूज़ कर रहे हैं. आउट पेशेंट डिपार्टमेंट को ओपीडी बोला जाता है, ठीक है? तो इन पेशेंट डिपार्टमेंट और आउट पेशेंट डिपार्टमेंट. तो हॉस्पिटल में आप जाओगे तो एक ओपीडी सेक्शन होता है जहाँ पे बेसिकली डॉक्टर्स मीट यू, यू कैन कंसल्ट देम, देन दे विल प्रिस्क्राइब सम मेडिसिन, यू गो होम, राइट? And then there is obviously the section where if the doctor says that you need to get admitted to the hospital, then you are moved to IPD section, which is where you get admitted to the hospital. तो उसका तो proper एक there is a process, right? Where you will be given visiting cards, you are basically put to a room, you are given a room in the hospital, right? It could be a shared room or a private room, but you are given a room in the hospital where you have a bed and you are basically now getting treated there, right? इसमें एक और nuance है which needs to be understood is that what about ER, right? जो emergency room होता है, उसका क्या होगा? Because वो तो OPD भी नहीं है क्योंकि उसमें तो बेड है, but वो admission नहीं है, right? So it's between OPD and IPD. That's also not covered under health insurance. So for example, absolutely, yeah, it's not covered under health insurance. So I'll tell you why. So basically, let's say I meet with a small accident, right? And my hand gets injured. I directly, whoever is with me, let's say you are with me, you take me in an auto rickshaw fatafat to a hospital nearby, and in that hospital, obviously, because now I am bleeding probably, then you will take me to the emergency room, correct? Which is basically also called what I think casualty, right? So casualty में लेके जाता है मुझे. तो and casualty में the doctor will say okay, you lie down, right? They'll start bandaging me first, right? First aid होगा, and then they will do some tests to check out के X-ray होगा basically to find out if there is a fracture or not. Probably a fracture is there. If the fracture is there, the doctor will say that okay, go to the fracture section of the hospital wherever they plaster you and they'll send you home, right?
So this is not covered.
Absolutely, this is not covered under health insurance. So wherever there is an admission in the hospital, right? When you are admitted to the hospital, then the expenses of that and in and around that is covered.
So let's say an accident happens, it's severe in nature, and you get admitted to the then that is covered.
Then even that your casualty cost will be covered. So as soon as let's say look at this example only, right? मेरा plaster हो गया, मैं घर चले गया, then it is not covered. But let's say मेरा plaster हुआ, but doctor says कि ये plaster cannot happen in OPD section, which is basically कि एक doctor आके आपका plaster करेगा, इसका proper surgery होगा, for example. Then I am admitted inside the hospital, right? I am given a room. After I am given a room, next day morning, let's say the surgery happens. If that procedure happens where I am admitted inside the hospital with a bed in the hospital, then even the casualty cost will be covered in the treatment. Here to understand is admission हुआ या नहीं हुआ. Admission अगर नहीं हुआ है hospital में तो cover नहीं होगा. Admission अगर हुआ है hospital में तो cover होगा.
Okay, let's say for example you go to a doctor, and for something he thinks you have something very serious.
Right.
And he tells you, go and get this test done.
Correct.
You go and get the test done.
Right.
But you're not admitted to the hospital.
Yes.
Yes. And now you have the reports.
Right.
So is that covered or not covered?
No, it's not covered. What? So exactly. So again, what is the key question to ask is, did you get admitted to hospital or not? So health insurance is a cover for hospitalization expenses. Hospitalization by the term itself means that you are hospitalized, which basically means that you are admitted in the hospital and you have a bed in the hospital.
Oh, right? This is something. So don't you think if people know about this,
right?
Yes, instead of getting the test done, they'll say, I am not feeling well, I need to be admitted.
Correct.
And there will be a lot of, manipulation of this happening, because ideally, if a doctor suspects something, you go and do the test and you get a positive result or a negative result. Yes. Ideally, let's say it's a 50,000 test. It's a bone marrow, something like that. You have to pay 50,000, 60,000 rupees, and you come from a family where this is a huge amount for you.
Correct.
Yes. So it should be covered, but it's not covered.
So I'll tell you how the definition further, if we go now drill down. This is a very good question, Karan. So further, when you drill down into this, I mentioned hospitalization is when you get admitted, right? But there is even a further part of what is covered under the scope of health insurance, right? In which basically it says that there are three main conditions when a hospitalization will also be covered, right? So first condition is basically that it is a necessary hospitalization. ठीक है. Necessary hospitalization मतलब जो आपने अभी example दिया, where I am sick but I can get treated at home, but I need to get a test done. So I basically tell the doctor कि अरे admit कर दो, तो cover हो जाएगा.
Right? Correct.
But essentially on a medical protocol level, whether the hospitalization was necessary or not will be checked by the insurance company. So the insurance company will look at medical protocols. They will talk to the doctor and ask the doctor, can this possibly be done at home? Would it possibly be a test that is done for monitoring purposes or for evaluation purposes, and then that person could have gone home, the results would have come, and again he would have got treated maybe by medicines or some kind of other treatment which does not require hospitalization. If the answer is yes, it is not covered. But if the answer is no, which is basically that the hospital is able to prove that no, this person needs a hospitalization, that it is covered. Like for example, chemotherapy, right? Chemotherapy जो होता है उसमें आप पूरे दिन हॉस्पिटल में नहीं रहते हो. You are there for a certain period of time, but it requires hospitalization, cannot be done at home. Right? So that is covered. Dialysis is covered. Dialysis is also done for, like, if I am not wrong, 4 hours लगता है कुछ dialysis करने के लिए. That is covered. So these things are covered. आई में कैटरैक्ट का ऑपरेशन होता है, 1 घंटे में कंप्लीट हो जाता है ऑपरेशन, 2 घंटे में आप घर जा सकते हो. That is also covered because it requires you to get admitted into the hospital. So I'll give an example, right? An 80-year-old person went to the hospital and got some tests done, right? And because she was 80 years old, she was given a bed in the hospital because वो ऐसे कैसे पूरा treatment हो रहा, right? तो testing के लिए she was there in the hospital for the entire day. After the tests were done, it was diagnosed that she has cancer. Right? But the doctor said that because she is 80 years old, she cannot be treated for this and she should basically go home, right? She cannot be treated because she is 80 years old and maybe she has comorbidities, which is basically multiple diseases है, और उसमें it is not possible that this person will be able to take in any kind of treatment. So she is taken home, right? Now whether this will be covered or not covered, this will not be covered, right? Because सिर्फ evaluation हुआ, right?
But though she was admitted,
right,
but still it will not be covered,
right? So that is where we come to the second condition. I was saying there are 3 conditions. So second condition is that the hospitalization should have something called active treatment. Right? ये सब क्यों बनाया है insurance companies ने? हाँ.
This while going to a insurance aggregator and just going and selecting insurance and ये तो okay, sorry, please continue.
So active treatment. See, I'll tell you why also. I'll explain why in a short way also why insurance companies would do this, right? So active treatment जिसको बोला जाता है कि आप हॉस्पिटल में इसीलिए भर्ती हो रहे हो ताकि your treatment will ensure that you move forward in your health. You will get cured, right? Anything which is for only monitoring or evaluation purposes and not really taking you forward and not curing you, and something that can happen at home will not be covered. Right? The reason is, otherwise इंडिया जैसा देश है, आप खुद सोचो कि आप स्कीम्स बना सकते हो इसमें कि एक हॉस्पिटल और एक डॉक्टर और एक पेशेंट मिलके कि हॉस्पिटल में भर्ती हो जाओ, टेस्ट करवा लो आपकी सारी जितनी भी एनुअल मेडिकल चेकअप्स करवानी है विद सम पर्ची, saying that oh इसको तो बहुत प्रॉब्लम है और करते रहो और मेडिक्लेम करते रहना और फिर क्लेम करते रहना, राइट. सो इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज आर क्रिएटेड ऑल दीज थिंग्स टू इंश्योर दैट दे आर प्रोटेक्टिंग इंटरेस्ट ऑफ देयर ओन, at the same time protecting interests of the customers who have genuinely require a hospitalization. अगर मैं सबको claim देने लग जाऊँ which do not require a hospitalization also, do not require an active treatment, which was not necessary, सिर्फ ऐसे ही मुझे ब्रिज कैंडी का सी फेसिंग ये चाहिए क्योंकि मेरे पास नो लिमिट्स पॉलिसी है, तो मैं जाके अभी मेरे पास होटल के खर्चे देने के लिए पैसे नहीं है, तो चलो मैं 4 साल से क्लेम नहीं किया, तो आई विल गो टू ब्रिज कैंडी, आई विल से कि मेरे को सी फेसिंग चाहिए, लो मेरा नो लिमिट पॉलिसी एंड आई कैन क्लेम. नो यू कांट, राइट. इट विल गेट मिसयूज्ड, राइट. सो इन देश जैसा भारत जैसा देश है उसमें यू नीड टू क्रिएट दीज contours in the agreement to ensure that the insurer is able to genuinely pay to people who genuinely need treatment. तो एक सिंपल तरीका, मैं सॉरी आपको कट कर रहा हूँ, बट एक सिंपल जो इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ है इसमें समझने का कि जेन्युइनली आपको हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन की ज़रूरत है तो कवर होगा. ये जो हम बात करें कि ये कवर नहीं होगा, ये कवर नहीं होगा, ये कवर नहीं होगा, ये क्लैरिटी देने के लिए है, राइट. बट अगर आपको जेन्युइनली हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन की ज़रूरत है तो वो कवर्ड है. ये इसके लिए ये सब एक्सक्लूजन डाले हुए हैं कि बहुत लोगों को जेन्युइनली ज़रूरत नहीं है बट दे वांट टू यूज़ इट जस्ट टू गेट ट्रीटेड.
ओके, इसमें एक क्वेश्चन था. I have seen this happen, okay, and personally I have seen this happen.
Yeah.
That hospital ना आपको पूछता है, do you have a mediclaim or no?
Absolutely.
Or a health insurance or no? The charge that they put on a bill for a health insurance,
right,
versus if you don't have an health insurance is always difference.
Correct.
So for example, if you say you have a mediclaim or a health insurance, sorry, mediclaim is such a normal word,
yes.
The charge is 10,000. If you say I don't have one, then the charge is 7,000.
Correct.
Why? What is this? And I'm sure the insurance companies are aware of this. And why it is not being checked at the ground level and.
Correct. So India mein first of all hospitals do not have any pricing regulation.
Correct.
Right?
That's a big problem. Yeah.
Right. So hospitals can basically charge depending upon their own systems. Right. Smaller hospitals do what you said. Right. Very small hospitals, nursing homes, they will define everything based on whether you are taking insurance or not. What larger hospitals do is very different. What larger hospitals do is that they do over treatment, right? जैसे मैं एग्जांपल देता हूँ, मेरे फादर का खुद का केस हुआ है, where my father had a major stomach related issue, right? And he was in hospital for a good time. And one day my father was taken for an MRI for the stomach.
Okay.
Next day or next to next day, my father was taken for a sonography of the stomach. Right, so I called one of my friends, right, and who's a doctor, and I asked him कि भाई MRI अगर करवाया है, is supposed to be superior technology than sonography, why would you need it? तो ये सिंह तू छोड़ ना बाबा, जाने दे, तेरा हो रहा है ना, हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस है ना, तो छोड़ दे. बोला टेक्निकली तू मुझे बता कि whether it's required or not. He said no, it's not required. So then I said I called up the doctor, who's the treating doctor, and I asked the doctor, right, कि ये कल आपने MRI कराया है, अभी आप सोनोग्राफी करा रहे हो, isn't it supposed to, MRI is supposed to cover everything that you don't need a sonography. So he is saying that sir कुछ extra दिखता है हमको sonography में. Now neither I am not a medical professional, I don't even want to challenge it, but these things do happen, right? I don't know, I am not a medical professional, even now I am not judging anything, but when these things happen you realize that there is something called an over treatment or over expenses that are incurred to you by larger hospitals as soon as they know that there is a medical claim. This is the truth.
Once na, please tell me and everyone who's watching this show today that what is not covered under health insurance.
Right, right. So first of all, we already covered this part that hospitalization needs to be necessary. It needs to be an active treatment and it should be as per the standard protocols of that country or at least an international protocol.
Okay.
Right? Just for the third point, I'll just give an example is that COVID ke time pe there were certain guidelines that the government came up with, right, which were basically around saying that who should be hospitalized, who should not be hospitalized, right, कि इतना temperature के ऊपर और इतना oxygen के नीचे और ये अगर age है, then this combo needs hospitalization and this combo does not need hospitalization. This is a proper paper that AIIMS had come up with.
Okay.
Right? So this is a medical protocol. This is the best example of a medical protocol. So insurers agreed with that and insurers would look at that. Wherever there was a hospitalization, they would say AIIMS के हिसाब से है, okay, pay. AIIMS के साथ नहीं है तो not payable. तो वो एक और चीज़ है जो थर्ड चीज़ है, which is standard protocols that exist. राइट. इसको छोड़ के इंश्योरेंस में बेसिकली टर्म्स एंड कंडीशंस होते हैं. सो लेट्स कवर दैट इन लेट्स से 2 पार्ट्स, राइट. सो देर आर सर्टेन कंडीशंस विद अ टाइम बाउंड कंडीशंस इन द पॉलिसी कि कुछ टाइम के लिए it will not be covered under health insurance. So these are basically exclusions, but for a certain period of time.
So I think something you already have.
Yeah,
it's called
is one of the conditions.
One of the conditions.
So there are 3 conditions.
Okay.
The first time when you take a policy, there is a 30-day waiting period, right?
Okay.
This is for sickness related claims. तो आपने आज पॉलिसी खरीदा, तो अगर आपका पॉलिसी आज इशू हुआ है, तो first 30 days you will not be able to claim anything around illness,
okay.
right? That is like a warming up period for the policy, right? But if there is an accident that happens during the 30 days, it is covered. Right?
Okay, accident is covered.
Accident is covered. The second is something.
And, sorry.
Yeah.
Anything related to accident is then covered. You
yes.
Casualty, emergency room, admission.
No. Admission is the core, right? Admission is the core. Okay. See, accident is not covered. Admission of accident is covered. The admission, whenever it happens for an accidental treatment, will be covered.
Okay. Fair.
Accident say related treatment will be covered. So first thing is that the 30-day waiting period. Then the second waiting period is something which is called a 2-year specific illnesses waiting period. ये बेसिकली ऐसा होता है कि लिस्ट ऑफ इलनेसेस इंश्योरेंस कंपनी अपने हॉस्पिटल अपनी पॉलिसी में बताता है दैट दीज इलनेसेस विल नॉट बी कवर्ड फॉर ईदर 2 years or 4 years. This is basically a list of usually very small treatments which they want to avoid in the first couple of years and basically from an economic sense, for their economic sense. So typically, let's say slip disc, right?
Okay.
Cataract, right? Treatment related to piles, treatment which is related to anything to be done with cataract, right? And these kind of things basically are not covered in the first 2 years.
Okay.
There are some 4-year waiting periods also, which is mandatory 4-year waiting period for things like let's say a knee replacement. Right?
Okay.
So if there is a knee replacement, it will not be covered for 4 years. तो ये second चीज़ है, ये आपको नहीं है तो भी नहीं कवर होगा फर्स्ट 4 साल में, right? So
अच्छा नहीं है तो भी नहीं कवर होगा.
हाँ, तो when you're buying the policy, I don't have any knee problem, but it does not cover you for 4 years for knee replacement. I didn't have a cataract issue.
Otherwise people will, if they have to
Yes.
get a knee replacement done, people will buy the policy, and in the next 1 month they will after 31st day they'll come and say अब हमको knee replacement कराना है.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that is the reason. If you look at it from a point of view of the other reason is that in insurance company when it's giving you a policy, it basically asks, some of the times it asks you to do a medical test.
Correct.
But the medical test cannot cover you head to toe. It does not do a test of head to toe. तो head to toe का अगर medical test करवाएंगे तो वो प्रीमियम से भी ज़्यादा महंगा हो जाएगा, right? तो आपका हेड टू टो टेस्ट नहीं हो सकता. ऐसे भी हेड टू टो टेस्ट करने के लिए मतलब पूरा क्या बॉडी का स्कैन कराओगे, क्या कराओगे आप? सो इंश्योरेंस डिपेंड अपॉन योर डिक्लेरेशंस दैट यू गिव एट द टाइम ऑफ यू बाइंग द पॉलिसी एंड दिस वेटिंग पीरियड, राइट? सो दैट दे आर एबल टू बेसिकली कीप द इकोनॉमिक्स ऑफ द पॉलिसी वायबल. सो दैट इज अ 2-year वेटिंग पीरियड एंड द 4-year वेटिंग पीरियड. Then the third condition is existing disease waiting period. So existing disease waiting period is for 3 years. कि आपने जब ये पॉलिसी खरीदा तभी आपको बताना होता है कि what are the diseases that you have, all the conditions that you have, and all these conditions will not be covered in the first 3 years. So for example, someone has diabetes, right? So diabetes related कोई भी treatment in the first 3 years of the policy will not be covered. It will be covered from 4th year immediately.
What about something like a cancer?
Yes. So cancer तो अगर आपको कैंसर है और आप पॉलिसी लेने जाओगे तो पहली बात तो मिलना ही बहुत मुश्किल है, राइट? वंस यू हैव सच अ सीरियस इलनेस, गेटिंग अ पॉलिसी इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट. बट लेट्स से इफ यू गेट द पॉलिसी, ऑब्वियसली देयर विल बी अ वेटिंग पीरियड. Insurers then fourth type of exclusion, that if you're talking about cancer, then it's important to understand that they could put a permanent exclusion also, saying that आपको पॉलिसी में दूंगा बट आपको क्योंकि कैंसर है तो मैं आपको कैंसर को छोड़ के सबका ट्रीटमेंट दे सकता हूँ, सॉरी कैंसर का ट्रीटमेंट का खर्चा नहीं दे सकता हूँ.
करेक्ट.
यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट एन इंश्योरेंस कंपनी हैज टू बी वायबल फॉर इट टू पे यू क्लेम्स आफ्टर 20 years. आप 30 year old हो, अगर आप 50 साल के टाइम पे चाहते हो कि एक इंश्योरेंस कंपनी क्लेम पे करे तो उनको ये सारे स्टेप्स लेने पड़ेंगे फॉर इट टू बी एबल टू मैनेज द मनी दैट यू आर गिविंग देम वेल, so that they are able to pay claims, right? अभी मैं सब देना शुरू कर दूँ तो 2 साल में तो पे नहीं कर पाऊंगा.
Let's take an example. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's say on the 10th of May you buy an insurance.
Correct.
Yes. And maybe on the 25th of May you have gone to a doctor for something very basic. And now the doctor says you have to get these 3-4 tests done. I'm suspecting something. And on the 1st of June you get detected by cancer. Now what happens?
सो 10th ऑफ आपने पॉलिसी 10th ऑफ मे को आपको हाथ में आ गई,
हाँ, आपके पास
राइट,
right? तभी तो आपको कुछ नहीं था,
करेक्ट, एंड 1st of June is when the cancer gets detected, right? So interestingly, this is a very good question, and this very few people know about this, that the 30-day waiting period is for treatments that happen during that 30-day period, not disease that happens during that 30 period.
नहीं, मुझे नहीं समझ,
वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू अंडरस्टैंड. जो आपने बोला वही बहुत अच्छा एग्जाम्पल है उसका, कि 30 डेज जो फर्स्ट 30 डेज है उसमें मुझे कैंसर डिटेक्ट हो गया, पर मेरा ट्रीटमेंट 31st डे से चालू हुआ, दैट विल बी कवर्ड.
अच्छा, okay.
But my treatment happening in the 30 days is not covered.
So that insurance cannot come back and say
yes
कि आपको कैंसर नहीं था, अब आपको 20 दिन में आ गया तो 30 दिन का तो हमारा वेटिंग पीरियड है,
नहीं,
तो अब तो हम नहीं पैसा देंगे.
तो the definition says that expenses during these 30 days are not covered. It does not say disease during these 30 days are not covered. That's a very good clause.
Okay, this is
because अगर disease 30 days में होता तो आपने जो बोला उसमें कवर नहीं होता, बट बिकॉज उन्होंने बोला कि एक्सपेंसेस है तो इसीलिए 31st डे से कवर होगा.
Yes. So we can come in and say this is a kind of trading cannot happen, you cannot trade, stop the trade for, and these are the people that are banned. Why IRDAI cannot come and say, you know, that all hospitals have to be cashless? Where is it? Is it a ministry problem? Is it a...
Yeah, so it's like you gave the example of SEBI. SEBI has control over the stock market. SEBI has control over brokers. But SEBI does not have control for, let's say, insurance agents. Right? Like that, IRDAI has control over insurance industry. But the healthcare industry is not under IRDAI. Right? So
it's a different...
Absolutely. Healthcare is healthcare. Right? Hospital का जो industry है वो तो healthcare ministry के अंदर आएगा, और IRDAI will come under finance ministry. So although the product that is getting covered underlying product is health and the financial risk of health. Right?
Correct.
But it is financial risk of health. Right? Like I am taking a loan for hospitalization.
Correct.
तो वो लोन फॉर हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन में ले रहा हूँ तो वो तो लोन है ना, फाइनली अंडरलाइंग प्रोडक्ट तो लोन है, इट विल कम अंडर बेसिकली अ फाइनेंशियल सर्विसेज. अभी मैं हॉस्पिटल के लिए लोन ले रहा हूँ या मैं शादी के लिए लोन ले रहा हूँ या मैं पर्सनल लोन ले रहा हूँ, दैट बेसिकली इज अ डिफरेंट मैटर. सो अंडरलाइंग एसेट या अंडरलाइंग लायबिलिटी इज वेयर द रेगुलेटर विल कम इन टू पिक्चर. तो इसमें हॉस्पिटल्स आर नॉट रेगुलेटेड बाय IRDAI. A lot of people actually say this, why IRDAI not doing this, why IRDAI is not doing anything, taking action against hospitals, but they can't. How can IRDAI take action against?
Because they are not under your purview.
Exactly.
So, sorry, I am a little bit stumped with this answer because I am surprised that there's a ministry which is doing separate, which is for finance, which I understand, okay, but the medical is so the, oh my God, this is like a this is like a nation kind of a problem.
This is a nation problem.
Nation problem. So we can't help this, but
we have to do a separate podcast for this.
Separate, you'll have to call, I think, a few very big people and,
correct,
and put them on the mic on this for that. So what are the other types of exclusions that the audience and me and everybody has to be aware of?
Right.
Because हम लोग generally सोचते हैं ले लिया पॉलिसी, ले लिया, हो गया, अभी कोई टेंशन नहीं, अब जो भी होगा देखा जाएगा.
Right. So we covered 3 right now. 30-day exclusion हमने cover किया, 2-year, 4-year exclusion which is specified illnesses which we listed.
Correct.
Some of the illnesses and talked about it. The third is pre-existing disease, which is again for people who already had a disease when they bought the policy.
Correct.
The fourth, which is also equally important to understand, is permanent exclusions in a policy, which is basically an insurance company saying कि ये मेरा scope of cover है, इसके बाहर जो है वो मैं cover नहीं करूँगा. Right? So for example, a lot of insurance products do not cover maternity. Right? Maternity treatments are not covered. A lot of insurance policies do not cover cosmetic treatments, right? Right. So cosmetic treatments are not covered. I basically get my skin changed, right? Celebrities get nose jobs done and all that.
Yeah.
So all that is basically something which is cosmetic. It is not a necessary thing. You're doing it for your own good.
Elective surgery कहते हैं ना इसको?
Elective surgery तो दूसरा भी होता है. Elective surgery तो ये भी होता है कि basically मेरा आईज में प्रॉब्लम है तो मैं ऑप्शनली ट्रीटमेंट करवा रहा हूँ. इलेक्टिव सर्जरीज आर कवर्ड, बट कॉस्मेटिक इज समथिंग दैट इज नॉट कवर्ड. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल आई राइट नाउ हैव अ नंबर ऑफ 1.5, राइट, मेरे चश्मे का नंबर 1.5 है, तो मैं मेरा लेज़र का ट्रीटमेंट करवा सकता हूँ और ये चश्मा निकल जाएगा मेरा, राइट, बट दिस विल बी कंसिडर्ड एज कॉस्मेटिक. Right, LASIK is not covered.
LASIK is not covered.
LASIK is not covered because see, it is covered up after a certain number, right? Which we'll put it on the screen right now. I don't remember the number, but after a certain number, it becomes like it can be considered to be like a disease or a disability which needs treatment. अभी तो मैं चश्मे से चल सकता हूँ, मैं चश्मे के बगैर भी देख पा रहा हूँ, राइट. ऐसे लोग होते हैं जिनका नंबर इतना हाई होता है कि probably they will have an issue if their चश्मा falls down. Right?
एक और है चीज़, काफ़ी इंश्योरर्स डेंटल कवर करते हैं, नहीं करते हैं. तो डेंटल इज नॉट कवर्ड बिकॉज कॉस्मेटिक वाला डेंटल इज नॉट कवर्ड. बट लेट्स से समवन हैज एन एक्सीडेंट, राइट, एंड ही ब्रेक्स हिज जॉ, राइट, दैट इज कवर्ड. But if I have
root canal is not covered.
अच्छा, root canal
we are not hospitalized. So we spoke about one important condition that आप admit हुए क्या हॉस्पिटल में. तो वो अगर नहीं हुए तो आपका golden question to ask before you ask whether it's covered or not is to ask
so
that
your plea to the doctor is always कि मुझे भाई एडमिट कर, बाद में जो करना है कर.
हाँ, अगर वो हो सकता था तो, बट वहाँ पे भी वो जो 3 कंडीशन है वो आएंगे. प्रोटोकॉल बेस्ड होना चाहिए कि मतलब वो प्रोटोकॉल में आता है वैसे, राइट. सो अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल, आई रिसेंटली स्पोक टू समवन who is very senior and she has a heart issue and the doctor prescribed that her root canal cannot be done in a regular dental clinic. It will have to be done in an OT, right, for some reason. But it was a regular root canal. Now in this case though, the person was hospitalized also and was taken in OT and done also. But because it is the core treatment is root canal, it is not covered, right. Accidental dental treatment is covered, right. So cosmetic surgery for someone who got burnt, right, and now cannot speak probably,
correct,
that is covered.
Okay, that is
correct. Right. So I'm saying if you understand it, reasonably understand it, and not try to look at it from an entitlement point of view, correct, you will see that everything that is necessary is getting covered. Anything which is basically little optional. Why maternity is not covered? Maternity is not a disease, it is a choice. Right? I am basically if I am deciding to have a baby, it is a choice, it's a lifestyle choice, right?
Correct.
It is not a disease. So that's why an insurance company is saying that this kharcha you take.
Okay,
right?
But because when I had a baby,
right,
I was working in a corporate which
right,
is an international company,
yes,
and my wife was also working over there.
Correct.
And she also had a health card,
right,
ICICI bank or insurance, whatever. And there the
yes,
total bill was close to 91,000, and we submitted in the company only, we submitted, and they gave around 60,000 they gave. So there it was covered. So is it
yes,
insurer to insurer?
No, it's not insurer to insurer. Group policy may cover it. So these policies, basically we spoke in the previous session that group policies can cover maternity. So group policies में क्या होता है कि insurer looks at a probability of hundreds. Okay. And knows that in hundreds there will be, let's say, 20% people will take maternity, like maximum. I'm just giving an example. It could be 10%.
Correct.
So there they are able to do that calculation and say कि यार इतनी population है, इसमें इतने लोगों की शादी हुई है तो इतने ही % होगा, तो they are able to do that math, right?
Okay.
But on a general basis, to generally give it out as a cover, at individual level people will start using it to basically just buy the policy and claim, and that's why it cannot be done at an individual level basis, right? There are now policies available which covers maternity, but they have a waiting period. तो आप पॉलिसी ले लो, 2 साल के बाद आपका कवर शुरू होगा. उसका लॉजिक ही है कि आप लेके क्लेम करोगे तो मैं कैसे जिंदा रहूंगा एज एन इंश्योरेंस कंपनी, राइट. सो 10,000 रुपये, a lot of people come to us and ask these questions कि my wife is pregnant, can I buy a health insurance cover it? My mom needs a knee surgery, can I buy a health insurance right now and cover it? हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस है, लॉटरी नहीं है भाई, गवर्नमेंट की कोई स्कीम नहीं है जहाँ पे कहीं से ऊपर से पैसे गिर रहे हैं कि आप 10,000 रुपया दे के 2 लाख का क्लेम कर दो. तो मैं ऐसे लोगों को आंसर ऐसा देता हूँ कि है सर अवेलेबल, आपका हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन ट्रीटमेंट का खर्चा कितना है, तो बोलता है 2.5 लाख रुपया. तो मैं बोलता हूँ सर हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस का प्रीमियम जो है वो 2.5 लाख रुपये और 1 रुपया है, 2,50,001 इतना प्रीमियम है, तो आप दीजिए मैं आपको वापस दे दूँगा.
वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. सो व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट ग्रुप इंश्योरेंस, ओके, is it only defined for corporates, or maybe let's say for example Lions Club of whatever of Kandivali or Borivali, I don't know,
correct,
Mumbai, can they also offer a group insurance?
Yes. Any group that has come together for some common purpose which is apart from insurance, राइट. इंश्योरेंस खरीदने के लिए आप ग्रुप नहीं बना सकते, बट आपका ऑलरेडी ग्रुप है, जैसे आपने लायंस क्लब का एग्जांपल दिया, सीए का जो सीएज है, सारे सीएज है, डेंटिस्ट की एसोसिएशन और भी ट्रेडर्स के एसोसिएशन है, डीलर्स के एसोसिएशन है, दे कैन बाय इंश्योरेंस as a common bulk में buy करना है. There is a large policy that community level पे available है, जैसे जैन करके एक community है इंडिया में, that runs one of the biggest insurance policies in India which covers all Jains, right? It's a voluntary treatment.
Oh,
right?
अच्छा.
So you can, even a community can come together and buy a policy, because the common purpose is not insurance. Common purpose is that these people are basically having a common interest.
Correct.
And then together as a bulk level they are negotiating with an insurance company and buying a customized policy. So that is possible. Okay. Even bank employees, so you can bank customers, so basically anybody can also cover their customers, right? तो आप बैंक में जाते हो तो बैंक, a lot of banks offer very cheap health insurance. Most of the times it is a group health insurance. तो बैंक ने बोला है कि मेरे सारे कस्टमर्स को कवर करो. हाँ. या फॉर एग्जाम्पल कल उठ के जैसे ऊबर करता है, अपने ड्राइवर्स के लिए इंश्योरेंस खरीदता है, तो ड्राइवर्स आर नॉट एम्प्लॉइज. करेक्ट. ड्राइवर्स आर नॉट इवन कस्टमर्स, दे आर लाइक सब कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स इन अ वे, बट दे कैन बी कवर्ड. फ्लिपकार्ट कैन कवर ऑल देयर sellers.
Swiggy can cover, or Zomato can cover all their delivery boys.
All delivery boys. If they are not employees, then even then it can cover.
So, will it be a group health insurance? Can it also be a group accident policy?
Yes,
and Asha, okay, it can be multiple. Yeah. So anybody who's watching the show today, and let's say they have 30 employees in their office or 40 employees, can they approach an insurer and say, you know what, we want a group policy?
So anybody who is an employer or anybody who's having a set of has a group, right? Any kind of group can go to an insurer and basically take a group insurance. Group insurance में एक specific thing है, if you're getting covered under group insurance, like a CA is getting covered under CA का insurance, or dentist getting covered under dental का insurance, they need to understand one thing is that it is a 1-year policy. Okay, retail insurance is a long-term policy. It's a lifetime renewable policy. This needs to be understood little well. कि आप जब एक रिटेल पॉलिसी खरीदते हो, आप पर्सनली आप जाके एक हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस खरीदते हो.
रिटेल मतलब एक आदमी जाके जब अपनी पॉलिसी.
दैट्स व्हाट आई सेड. हाँ, कि इफ यू आर बाइंग अ पॉलिसी पर्सनली विद एन इंश्योरर डायरेक्टली, देयर इज नो एसोसिएशन इन बिटवीन, देयर इज नो कंपनी इन बिटवीन, यू आर बाइंग इट डायरेक्टली विद एन इंश्योरेंस कंपनी थ्रू एन एजेंट और नॉट, दैट इज ओके, बट नॉट थ्रू एन एसोसिएशन इन टू सम अदर ग्रुप और अदर कंपनी. आप डायरेक्टली जाके यू आर बाइंग अ पॉलिसी. इन दैट स्पेसिफिक केस, राइट, the regulation says that you have lifetime renewable guarantee, right? What this means is that at any point in time an insurance company cannot stop your renewal unless you stop paying premiums. तो मुझे ये, मैंने पॉलिसी ले ली 15 साल, मैंने कोई क्लेम नहीं किया, सडनली लेट्स से कैंसर हो गया, तो ऐसे नहीं है कि मैंने कैंसर का एक क्लेम किया तो नेक्स्ट ईयर इंश्योरेंस कंपनी बोलेगी भाई अभी तो बहुत महंगा हो गया, आई एम नॉट गिविंग यू अ कवर. Insurance company cannot stop your cover at any point in time.
Okay. Is there a limit? Saying for example, my insurance cover is 30,000, and then I get detected with one of these critical illnesses. And is there a limit that the insurance company, or you can say now your insurance is 5 lakh rupees?
No. So they cannot reduce your cover, but they will have the prerogative to say that we will not increase your cover from now. So basically, let's say आपका upgrade नहीं कर सकते आप कोई भी पॉलिसी को. So for example, if I have, let's say I had a 10 lakh policy, and now let's say I'm diagnosed with a serious illness. Correct. Right. In that specific case, okay, insurer will, अभी मैं बोल रहा हूँ अच्छा अभी तो serious illness हो गया, now can you make my policy 1 crore? Insurance company is not going to do that, right? And that's why we spoke in on a previous episode that whatever cover you need, you buy in one shot. And don't think that whenever you need it you will get it.
I think this is a great thing to tell everybody who says अभी तो मैं 30 साल का हूँ, right? I'll take it. No, what is the urgency? Correct. I'm just 35. I'm very healthy. Correct. What is the need for it? Correct. I think this is a great point for them, saying
absolutely. That
it's like you had mentioned in the previous episode.
Right.
You are insuring yourself against that future mishap. Right. Let's not postpone it. But what would you want to just quickly tell them that people who keep postponing insurance?
Right. So I'll just complete the previous point first. The previous point mein basically we spoke about lifetime renewability. Lifetime renewability is available only in retail policies. But when you buy a group policy through an employer or through any association, it is a 1-year policy. And every year an insurer and the customer, which is basically the association or the employer, sits and renegotiates the terms and conditions of the policy and the pricing of the policy. तो हर साल इसके terms and conditions change हो सकते हैं, हर साल इसका premium change हो सकता है, ये policy बंद भी हो सकती है. A lot of government banks had insurance policies for their customers which got stopped because of huge claims, right? Because they were group policies, every year it gets negotiated, insurance company can back out. after the year gets over.
Okay.
It's not renewable lifetime, right? A group policy that you buy through a bank or an employer or anybody, it's not renewable for the lifetime. It's renewable only for that period, and every year it will basically get renewed depending upon the negotiation that happens between the group owner and the insurer, right? So that's something that we need to understand. So now, if you could ask the question.
Sorry, my question was that people who generally keep, postponing policies. That,
right.
I'm 30. What's the need right now?
Correct.
I'm 35. I'm very healthy.
Correct.
I don't have any habits that would push me to a.
Absolutely.
What would you want to say to them?
Yeah. So the thing is exactly what we spoke about 10 minutes back, right? That health insurance तभी नहीं मिलेगा जब आपको ज़रूरत होगा. You will have to buy health insurance. It's like pre-booking something. That you pre-book something for your future when you don't need it. It is very counterintuitive, but very important to understand that the best policy you will get in health insurance is when you don't need it. It is almost like loan भी, right? जब मेरे पास बताने के लिए credibility है तभी मुझे policy मिलेगी. जब बताने के लिए credibility नहीं है तो I will have to probably go and find someone. Not the best of the banks will give me a policy, a loan. Similarly, in case of health insurance, you have to take a health insurance and take a adequate health insurance when you are at the best of your health, when you do not have any diseases, because then you negotiate and get the best policy available in the market. So the best time to buy a health insurance is before you hit 30, and you best time to ensure that you have adequate insurance is by the time you hit 30.
Okay, one question that I had in my mind is people turning 30.
Right.
Should you take one insurance which is, let's say, for example, 5 lakh rupees?
Right.
And you should take not a top up. Top up is that we spoke about top up, right? You should take one more insurance of 2 lakhs because if something small happens, then you don't touch the 5 lakh or the 25 lakh or the 30 lakh family policy that you have taken. You just use the 2 lakh one and then you run towards it. Or you would recommend that why do all this? Take a family plan of 5 lakh, 10 lakh rupees and then take a top up insurance of another 90 lakh. What would you recommend?
So first of all, buying a low cover has its own limitations, right? Okay. Most of the insurance companies in India, when you buy a low cover, will also give you low benefits. Like for example, आपको जो room मिलेगा eligibility के against will be a very basic room. Like a lot of insurance companies also say that if you're buying a 2 lakh cover, you will get a cover of under that policy. The hospital room that you can take probably would be of maximum cost of 2,000 rupees a day. Right, in a city like Bombay, 2,000 rupees a day में आपको almost general ward के आसपास मिलेगा कुछ, right? So it's very low. So first of all, तो buying a smaller policy because you have a company policy or buying a smaller policy because you want to save on premium is not a good practice to do because you are not optimizing for good healthcare. You are optimizing for premium, which is not the goal that you should look at health insurance from. So पहले तो एक base policy जो है वो हमारे हिसाब से मिनिमम 10 lakhs का होना चाहिए बिकॉज दैट 10 lakhs पॉलिसी बेसिकली इंश्योर्स दैट यू गेट द बेस्ट ऑफ द बेनिफिट्स इन दैट पॉलिसी. सो मोस्ट ऑफ द इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज गिव यू नो लिमिट रूम रेंट लिमिट, नो लिमिट रूम रेंट इन अ पॉलिसी विच इज़ 10 lakhs. तो मतलब आप कोई भी रूम में जा सकते हो, आपके पास वो फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी रहेगा एंड यू कैन बेसिकली टेक केयर ऑफ योर फैमिली टू द nth लेवल देन, राइट? ऑफ कोर्स अप टू द सम इंश्योर. And always, meaning when you're looking at buying a health insurance and you're looking at a long term, and typically we say that buy a cover which is maximum that you can afford. Minimum is around 15 lakhs per adult. Okay. But maximum आप buy करो तो top up strategy always works.
Always works. I want to ask one question that a lot of people work in large organizations,
right.
Yes, and they intend to keep working in large organizations for the rest of their lives till the time they retire. So their thought process is, I have an insurance, and these are when we talk about international organizations or even national today.
Correct.
Yes, these guys have very good health covers.
Yeah.
So they believe that why to spend this money? I already am covered. But what happens at the age of 58 or maybe 61 or 62 when they retire?
Correct.
Can they get an insurance then, or will this cover? I don't think this will cover, right? Because your employment is terminated.
Correct. So you cannot be covered with that employer. Okay. A lot of employers, very large employers, do have a retirement employee scheme also. But I am talking about भारत पेट्रोलियम लेवल लार्ज कंपनीज, राइट? मतलब गवर्नमेंट की बहुत सारी कंपनीज है जिन्होंने लाइक RBI हैज़ अ एक्स RBI एम्प्लॉइज का कवर, राइट? बट मोस्ट ऑफ द प्राइवेट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस डोंट हैव अ एक्स कवर, राइट? what is available and what is told to you is that there is something that is available which is called portability.
Portability,
Right?
okay.
So portability में ऐसा होता है कि आप you can basically move from one policy to another policy.
Correct.
And all the credit that you had, this is basically the waiting periods that you have covered, which we spoke about in the beginning. All those credits will basically move on to the new policy, right? And it will be seamless in a large cell, seamless. But what happens with a corporate policy is that at the time when you are trying to do it, let's say at the time of very close to retirement, or let's say your early retirement also, कोई 45 में ही retire हो रहा है, let's say life से, at that time when you are trying to retire from and you are trying to port the policy, the rule says that the insurer has the right to underwrite the policy again, underwrite the customer again. What does underwriting mean? Is that to evaluate you again from a point of view that you are buying a new policy. तो मैं क्या क्या check करता, I will check everything again. So basically they will check whether your health is okay, your lifestyle is okay, you are not overweight, underweight, all that, and then deciding based on that, they will say that okay, we will move you to X policy or Y policy.
But they can deny also.
They can deny also. Absolutely, that's what I was coming to.
Okay.
They can deny also. तो ये बहुत हुआ है. मैंने पहले जब portability आया था तभी I used to work in an organization which used to deal with Citibank, right, as a client, right, and I used to do a lot of these Citibank employees का transfer, right, and they used to have insurance with a specific insurer and movement to the other companies, and these employees were very proud of working with Citibank, and when they were moving out of the company they wanted to move to an insurance which is giving them all this credit, right, but it does not matter. The insurance company after time of portability as looking at you as a new fresh customer with a new fresh risk and looking at you whether they want to cover or not in a similar fashion that you would have gone and bought a fresh policy from them, right?
Okay.
वो जो एक there is no entitlement of you being working with a large company for such a long time and hence getting some kind of leeway with the insurance company.
So there is no compulsion that they have to give you an insurance. The premium can be high, but there's no compulsion. They can deny also. The
premium can be high. They can deny. They can add an exclusion. It's like almost like buying a new policy. Just the benefit is that you could get some credit of being covered under the health insurance of that employer for a good period of time. So the risk of someone who is thinking that मैं तो lifelong बड़े company में काम करने वाला हूँ, is that at the time of you retiring and you wanting to port, it is not necessary that the insurance company will agree to port at the terms that you think you will get.
Correct.
Insurer will have the upper hand to say कि मैं तो यही दूंगा, मैं तो इतना ही कवर दूंगा, मैं नहीं दूंगा. All that can come into picture. So it's a very big risk.
आप जब retire हो रहे हो at the age of 60,
right,
आधी लाइफस्टाइल डिजीज तो आज ऐसी आ जाने वाली है. तो इंश्योरेंस कंपनी ऑलरेडी कह सकती है नहीं,
एब्सोल्युटली
इतनी लायबिलिटी हमको लेनी नहीं.
करेक्ट. तो इंश्योरर्स आर people who want to get very very healthy people in their book.
Correct.
Right, उनका जो एक book है उनमें उनको healthy people लाना है ताकि जितने healthy लोग होंगे. What is insurance? Insurance is healthy people paying for sick actually. So healthy people are paying premiums every year and sick people are getting paid from that premium. So any insurance company which does not have enough healthy people will not be able to pay for sick, and hence that overall thing will not work. Neither will the insurance make profit, neither will claims get paid because insurer may not have money because everybody claiming, then पैसा आएगा नहीं. 10,000 रुपये पे 1 लाख रुपये का claim कैसे दूंगा मैं?
Correct.
So that is how the whole thing works, and that's why an insurance company specifically has to do these evaluations before they give you a policy.
A lot of people say this also, that you know what, two sets of people, okay?
Right.
One who is an employee working in a large organization, he says instead of me putting in 40,000 every year or 30,000 every year, I will put this money in mutual fund.
Right.
Okay? Today mutual funds are giving handsome returns, and everybody, if you see the entire YouTube ecosystem, everybody is saying save karo mutual fund mein dalo.
Correct.
So they say I will put in mutual funds. When I become 60, I will have a good corpus.
Yeah.
And why should I not do that, and why should I pay them? That is one. Sorry. The second set of people who are not working in an organization, yes, but still have the same thought process that मैं म्यूचुअल फंड में डाल, मैं गोल्ड खरीद लेता हूँ, मैं एफडी कर लेता हूँ, और जब प्रॉब्लम होगा तब ये पैसा निकाल लूँगा.
Correct.
So what would you want to tell them?
Yeah, so you have to understand two things about health insurance before you decide to do this. Right. The first thing is that a health insurance policy जो भी आपको कवर मिल रहा है वो रीइंस्टेटेबल कवर है. व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ रीइंस्टेटेबल कवर है कि एक साल में अगर आपने 10 लाख का कवर लिया है तो आपका नेक्स्ट ईयर जब शुरू होता है तो लेट्स से आपने फर्स्ट ईयर पॉलिसी लिया तो कुछ भी क्लेम नहीं किया, सेकेंड ईयर पॉलिसी लिया उसमें से 2 लाख क्लेम कर दिया, थर्ड ईयर व्हेन यू स्टार्ट इट अगेन स्टार्ट्स विद 10 lakhs, राइट. दिस इज समथिंग दैट पीपल डोंट अंडरस्टैंड. दे लुक एट इट लाइक अ टर्म इंश्योरेंस जहाँ पे आपने 1 करोड़ का पॉलिसी लिया, एक ही बार क्लेम आएगा.
हाँ.
When you buy a health insurance, you are buying it for a lifetime. So a 30-year-old is buying till let's say 80.
हाँ.
तो 50 साल में अगर he's buying a 10 lakh cover.
So a lot of people feel that instead of buying a health insurance, I will save this money, do an FD, buy gold, or maybe invest in mutual funds. That content is so much out there. Invest in mutual funds, become a crorepati. Yes. So what would you want to tell the?
Yeah. So basically, 2 things about health insurance that people don't understand well and need to understand better is that the first thing is that a health insurance is a reinstatable policy. Every year you get that cover. So for example, आप जब term insurance लेते हो तो you will make only one claim. It's a death policy, so it will have only one claim. Health insurance will have multiple claims. So when you are starting at let's say buying a policy at 30 and let's say you live till 80, there 50 years के लिए you are, and if you have a 10 lakh cover, you don't have a 10 lakh cover for 1 year. You have a 10 lakh cover for 50 years. Right. So when you are calculating mutual fund का value, you will also have to look at 10 lakh for 50 years and not 10 lakh for taking a fund and keeping for 10 lakhs. लेकिन बहुत लोग को ये लगता है कि 10 लाख का कवर लूँ, इससे अच्छा 10 लाख का एक फंड बना लेता हूँ, 10 लाख रखता हूँ. बट वो 10 लाख सिर्फ एक बार फंड बनाओगे आप, और वो 50 साल में अगर आपका यूज भी होगा तो नॉट नेसेसरी दैट विल टेक केयर ऑफ मल्टीपल फ्रीक्वेंसी में अ डिजीज एंड मल्टीपल फैमिली मेंबर्स. So when you look at health insurance, you have to look at it from that point of view that it is a 10 lakh cover into 50, right, that you are covering. That is the first thing. Second is that it's a lifetime renewable policy which we spoke about, right. तो lifetime renewable होने के कारण क्या होता है कि आप कितने भी एज हो जाएगा आपका, आप प्रीमियम भरते रहोगे, आपका कवर शुरू रहेगा, राइट. ये 2 चीज़ को जब आप एक्सेल में डालोगे कि लाइफ टाइम रिन्यूएबल भी करना है and you have to have a cover for every year and every year you should have a cover to take care of that 10 lakhs का risk for 50 years, you will realize, I have done this calculation on a Twitter thread actually. तो बहुत मुश्किल है कि आप उसको एक फंड से सॉल्व कर सकते हो,
ओके,
राइट. एंड इट इज ऑलमोस्ट लाइक यू आर सेइंग दैट मैं ही इंश्योरेंस कंपनी बन जाता हूँ, राइट. मेरी खुद की इंश्योरेंस कंपनी बन जाता हूँ. इंश्योरेंस कंपनी का काम क्या है? फंड लेना और फिर को क्लेम आएगा वो पे करना. तो मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ कि मैं इंडिविजुअली एक इंश्योरेंस कंपनी बन जाता हूँ, मैं मेरा फंड मैनेजमेंट करूँगा और फिर सारे क्लेम मैं पे करूँगा मेरे फैमिली के. इतना आसान होता तो मतलब इंश्योरेंस कंपनी इतना पैसा चार्ज नहीं करती.
करेक्ट. एंड जनरली व्हेन they're charging these premiums,
right,
yes, is there, because ये एक क्वेश्चन है जो अभी जस्ट मेरे दिमाग में आया था, मैंने जब आपको पूछूं, is there a way to save on premiums and can people become smart about this, because at the end of the day it pains, this is something that you don't get anything physical. हाँ, notionally आपको आप safe हो, but is there a way to save something on premiums? Absolutely. Is there a strategy that people can use?
Absolutely. So there are hacks, meaning the one hack that I typically recommend to a lot of people who do not want to take a very big pinch on premiums is that, let's say, this same person who said that, let's say, मैं एक फंड बना लेता हूँ, they can create a fund, but the way to create a fund is probably in a way where you take a super top up strategy, right? So I'll explain how to do it. Like, मुझे ऐसे लगता है कि first 5 lakhs of claim, if it happens in any year, I will be able to pay it. मेरे पास इतना वेल्थ होगा कि मैं 5 लाख रुपया खुद से जेब से पे कर सकता हूँ.
ठीक है.
तो what you could do is you buy only a super top up policy above 5 lakhs. Okay. Right? So you are having a reverse stop loss policy where you are saying 5 lakhs तक का लॉस मैं खुद बेयर करूँगा, 5 lakhs के ऊपर का जो लॉस है, for that I will buy a policy.
Is that available in the market?
Yeah,
people can do that.
Yeah, so you can buy a super top up policy as a standalone policy instead of having a base policy and a super top up policy.
Oh, okay. Right. So people, this is the reason that when I started interacting with Beshak.org and I had so many questions and they are trying to answer that, and then we are trying to get this content out to you, and itna in depth इंश्योरेंस के बारे में I don't think there is any content today available on any platform. So my request is, though you are seeing this content, send it to one friend, one family member or one cousin that says, boss मेरे को कुछ नहीं होगा. Yes, sorry, coming back to this. Now let's say I am working in the US, but I am an Indian citizen at this point in time. Yes, should I take a policy in India? A health insurance policy in India?
Right. So if you plan to ever come back to India, or if you plan to take treatments in India, a lot of people actually want to take treatment in India because probably care is easily available.
Correct.
Right. So if I have a friend, right, who is now a US citizen, right?
Okay.
But he's an Indian, so he comes to India for treatments, right?
Okay.
Because he finds that the support system is much better, right? So he should have any case where you are planning to have a treatment in India, then you should have a health insurance in India. The second case is someone who is saying that after a certain age, I will want to come back to India.
Come back to India.
A lot of people want to plan to come back to India.
Yes.
So all those people, specifically people in the UAE, right? A lot of people are clear that they don't want to live all their life there. They want to come back after a certain age. They are planning basically their finances. Once they reach a certain corpus, they want to come back. In those cases, it's better to have a health insurance that is active in India, although you're paying premium and not using it for that time period when you are abroad, instead of buying a health insurance when you come back. Because same issue which you talked about in case of, let's say, an employee leaving his employment, which you spoke about, कि जब आपको चाहिए रहेगा ज़रूरी नहीं है you will get it. So always buy at your prime and ensure that you pre-book a very good health insurance at the early age when you can, even if you're staying abroad. In these two cases, one is that you're planning to take a treatment in India. Second is that you're planning to, in your retirement, come back to India.
So let's say, for example, somebody is either traveling or is staying outside. Yes, something happens. Yes, an accident kind of a thing happens. Yes, and now maybe in the US or in the UK, we've all heard crazy stories, right? The kind of medical bills that happen. But they had a health insurance in India. Can they come back to India and claim that insurance?
No. So. If in this specific scenario, we are talking about an Indian who had traveled abroad and he
one is let's say they had traveled for leisure or business purposes, yes, and they had taken that travel insurance, okay, then I think so that travel insurance is valid. They can come and claim that, right?
No. So there are two aspects, right? One is that I am an Indian, I have a health insurance in India, and I have gone abroad. I fell sick, I came back in India and I'm getting treated.
Correct.
That is anyways covered in your health insurance. Yeah. The other is that you fall sick abroad and you need treatment abroad while you have been traveling there for a leisure trip or a business trip. In that case, obviously this health insurance does not cover it. Health insurance covers you for treatment inside India.
Okay.
It does not cover you for treatment outside India. So most of the policies, then there are policies available which could basically have an extension which could cover travel insurance, which is what we are talking about. But usually the policies that people would have or are planning to buy would be a India specific policy. There are certain policies which give you global covers, but that is basically, if I am in India and let's say I have a specific illness that has happened and I want to opt into treatment outside India, कि मेरे को लग रहा है कि इंडिया में इसका ट्रीटमेंट सही नहीं होता, मेरे को यूएस जाके ट्रीटमेंट लेना है, मेरे को सिंगापुर जाके ट्रीटमेंट लेना है. In that specific case, there are global covers available where you can go and get treated abroad. But that's slightly obviously a very expensive policy that you will buy. So there are three scenarios. One scenario is that you are in India and you need treatment in India, so that obviously is covered. You are an Indian, you go abroad, you fall sick, you come to India and you want to cover yourself in India, that is also covered. You are in a country abroad and you specifically need treatment at that time, that will only be covered under travel insurance. One more scenario, the fourth scenario if you have to say, is a scenario where I am in India but I want to get treated abroad. Then that you will have to buy a global cover. So these are all the permutation combinations
that are available to your customers. Okay. Now coming back to that question that we had left is, why is it such a big pain to make claims in this country?
Right.
It is crazy the amount of and one is this cashless versus non-cashless. Now what happens is you want to go to the best doctor or the best hospital.
Correct.
But that is not covered in cashless under your policy. So now that is a big problem. So but you will go there and then the amount of paperwork that happens. Why is it like IRDAI for example, yes, or maybe the health ministry or somebody? Why is it, or is it the same for across the world? Am I bickering, कि इंडिया में ऐसा होता है जबकि पूरी दुनिया में ऐसा होता है?
Right.
Is it? Can you just help us with this? That इतना क्यों complex है ये nature इसका?
Right. So yes, as a person who is not from the space, when you're doing it for the first time,
correct,
तो ये ओवरवेलमिंग तो लगेगा, बिकॉज आपको लगेगा कि अरे इतना कॉम्प्लिकेटेड क्यों है, बट यू कैन एक्चुअली मेक इट सिंपल इन माई व्यू. तो लेट्स फर्स्ट टेक कैशलेस, राइट, वी आर स्पीकिंग अबाउट कैशलेस. तो कैशलेस में ऐसा है कि फर्स्ट द हॉस्पिटल दैट वी आर सिलेक्टिंग फॉर द ट्रीटमेंट is not selected basis whether that is cashless or not. Normally hospitals are selected by the doctor or by the patient, right? मैं एक डॉक्टर के पास गया, डॉक्टर said that I'll treat it in this hospital, or as a patient I decide कि I like this hospital. So you are first selecting the hospital and not cashless, and hence you will then check whether cashless is available or
correct,
not. Or every insurance company will have a list of hospitals that they want to do cashless or not, and not do cashless, right? उसमें एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के जैसे है वो कि इंश्योरर और हॉस्पिटल के बीच में वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बना के नहीं बना, एंड वेरियस रीजंस दैट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट इज नॉट देयर, इसलिए उसमें कैशलेस अवेलेबल नहीं है. बट लेट्स से कैशलेस अवेलेबल है, तो आप इजी कैसे कर सकते हो? तो पहला चीज़ है कि इफ़ यू आर डूइंग अ प्लान्ड हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन, व्हाट यू कैन डू इज दैट बिफोर द पेशेंट इवन रीचेज द हॉस्पिटल, यू कैन prior to that, let's say a couple of days back, before that, you can go to the hospital and start the paperwork, right? You can give it to the insurance company through the hospital, and you can start the entire process even before the person is getting admitted. उसका benefit ये है कि suppose आपको मालूम है कि एक stomach surgery करना ही है, and the doctor is saying कि 4 दिन में बात करने वाला है, so you go to the hospital, you do the paperwork, and you can ask the hospital, request the hospital, and you send the papers. So that approval, अगर उसको 2-3 दिन लग भी गया, for whatever reason additional papers are required, that will happen during that time. So that is one. Why so much paperwork is required is because हमने एक साइड बात किया terms and conditions का, this is covered, this is not covered. So an insurance company is not paying for all claims. Correct. It's paying for claims that are covered under the policy. So they need to evaluate all these things before they can pay a claim. राइट, तो मुझे देखना है कि स्कीम में अब पेएबल है कि नहीं है, आपके पास कवर अवेलेबल है कि नहीं है, एंड एक्सक्लूजन्स में तो नहीं है, वो सब कवर करना है. उसके लिए आई नीड एज एन इंश्योरेंस कंपनी, दे नीड टू टेक पेपर फ्रॉम यू और द हॉस्पिटल टू फिगर आउट के बेसिकली वेदर दिस क्लेम इज पेएबल और नॉट, राइट. अभी भी ये प्रोसेस टू अ लार्ज एक्सटेंट मैनुअल है, like a human is actually checking the papers.
Correct.
A human is sending the papers from the hospital. They are physical papers, they are not electronic papers. तो इसीलिए ये सब चीज़ें लोग कर रहे हैं और टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं कर रहा है. That's why there is a hassle, because every time there are papers that are exchanged between two parties.
Correct.
Right?
So I think that is where, you know, going through an agent will help, because it is impossible. I've gone through that once.
Correct.
It is impossible for me to, you know, get everything right.
Right.
And then you make this one bunch, you send it to them, and then they say ये एक पेपर रह गया, अब ये लेके आओ. फिर आप उधर भागोगे, फिर वो करोगे, फिर वापस आओगे. So it becomes such a nightmare that we said, forget it. It's 3-4 lakh rupees we'll pay, and we don't want to make this claim. Forget it.
Right. But it's not like meaning. I think if you are okay to be slightly persistent. Like a lot of people don't want to do it. That's okay. And a lot of people probably are able to pay that money from their own pocket. That is also a second thing. But if you are being slightly persistent, right, meaning where you are very clear, you are understood the documentation. So every policy document mentions कि आपको क्या क्या documents देने हैं claim के time पे. आप जब ये hospital के through भी जा रहे हो तो hospital आपको एक list देगा कि ये these are the papers that you need to submit. If you diligently ensure that you submit all the papers that are required, then you're not going to have any issue at the time of claim, apart from, let's say, a couple of back and forth that could happen, right? So the most important thing is that first becoming aware that these are the papers that are required. For example, जो back and forth होता है वो किस में होता है? तो normally जो हम लोग recommend करते हैं कि there are 3 types of papers that you need to keep, right? एक होता है prescriptions, एक होता है receipts और invoices, और तीसरा जो होता है वो reports होता है. यही इंश्योरेंस कंपनी मांगता है. तो प्रिस्क्रिप्शन मतलब क्या है? ये हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन क्यों हो रहा है, उसका डॉक्टर का नोट कि डॉक्टर ने क्यों डिसाइड किया हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन करने का, या डॉक्टर हैज सेड दैट दिस मेडिसिन इज रिक्वायर्ड, और दिस एक्सरे इज रिक्वायर्ड, और दिस सर्जरी इज रिक्वायर्ड, और दिस फिजियोथेरेपी इज रिक्वायर्ड. तो उसका प्रिस्क्रिप्शन डॉक्टर के पास से चाहिए कि डॉक्टर बोल रहा है, मैं मेरे मन से नहीं कर रहा हूँ. दैट इज वन. द सेकंड इज रिसीट्स, कि इंश्योरेंस कंपनी वांट्स रिसीट्स कि आपने पे किया है, तो प्रूफ चाहिए इनवॉइस या रिसीट्स का कि एग्जैक्टली व्हाट इज द मनी दैट यू हैव पेड. The third is reports. So basically every time you have done a test, they want to see the report also to basically establish that why this specific protocol is happening. Insurers also employ doctors, right?
Okay.
So doctors want to basically sitting there, maybe they are not as qualified as a surgeon, but they are qualified to understand those papers, to understand कि ये line of treatment के अंदर ही expense है या बाहर है. तो ये 3 पेपर अगर आप रखते हो, उसको मैं normally PRR करके बोलता हूँ कि basically prescriptions, receipts and invoices, and third is reports. अगर आप ये को maintain करते हो और आप एक file maintain करते हो, as soon as you have realized that a treatment is happening, if you maintain a file of all the papers, chain of papers that have start from there to end when the treatment gets completed, then that will get basically ensure that you do not have an issue with any kind of documentation.
I want to ask Mahavir now one simple thing that people could do ताकि ये health insurance की झंझट से इंसान बाहर निकल सके.
Right, so मतलब जो हम लोग को अभी तक जो सोचा है और समझा है, उसमें एक इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ है कि whenever thing gets complicated, it's important that you either become an expert in that or you hire an expert.
Correct.
Mostly becoming an expert is something which is counterproductive. आप जो चीज़ पे काम कर रहे हो उस पे फोकस करो and you find an expert.
गाड़ी खराब हुई तो मैं मैकेनिक थोड़ी बनने जाऊंगा.
Absolutely. या मुझे टैक्स फाइलिंग करनी है and it's a little complicated, तो मैं सीए थोड़ी ना बन जाऊंगा.
Correct.
So it's important that या मुझे किसी ने मेरे पे केस किया है तो मैं लॉ की बुक लेके पढ़ना शुरू कर दूँ. These are examples, right? So in a similar way, finding the right professional and finding the right insurance professional who can basically ensure that they do the hand holding while you are buying the policy. They help you basically understand the terms and conditions which are important. They find the right policy for you. They ensure that you fill the proposal form properly. And at the time of claims, they are there with you. Is a super important thing in my view, which can change the fortunes in terms of whether you get a claim or not get a claim. Correct. And all that. और इसमें बहुत important चीज़ ये है कि yes, there is a difference in premium between someone buying a policy directly and buying from an agent. There could be a difference, but that difference is not that big that you try to become an expert and try to do it like that, right? Like mutual fund में मुझे मालूम है कि मैं SIP रोक सकता हूँ, चालू कर सकता हूँ. मैं म्यूचुअल फंड में ये भी है कि मैं को कभी चाहिए तो मैं विड्रॉ करना है तो एक क्लिक पे विड्रॉ कर दूंगा.
Correct.
Health insurance does not work like that. You can click and you will get a claim. Correct. You need a human for all the processes after you have purchased the policy also, and that to do it yourself is again like tax filing खुद से करना. या basically mechanic खुद से बनना, right? So that's how we look at it, and I think India is anyways a market where we want people to do our work, right? मतलब हम चाहते हैं लिफ्ट में भी जाते तो हमको एक लिफ्टमैन चाहिए जो अपने को 10 माला जाना है तो 10 माला दबाए.
हाँ, कहीं ना
Absolutely.
काफी हाई है.
हाँ, and the reason is because we are anyways stressed and a lot of other things we are looking at solving for. So here, so this is a very important thing. Even if you have to pay a little bit more, it's important to find a good expert and then buy a policy from them. Take as much care to find the policy. जितना आप टाइम लगाते हो ढूंढने को, उतना ही टाइम लगाओ एक एक्सपर्ट ढूंढने के लिए. So that would be a much better bet in the long run. Let's say you're talking about 20-30 years. Correct. Than basically saving that 2%, 5% of premium.
Correct. So this is going to be a plug-in is what people might feel, but whether you buy the insurance from Beshak.org trusted agent or not, my sincere request is log on to the portal, talk to a trusted advisor, understand what you need, and then you decide what you want to do ahead. समझे?